So good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar series. This is the third one, actually. This one is about DLP. So let us introduce ourselves. Sorry. My name is Stan van Hof. I'm Business Development Manager at Exclusive Networks, specialized in emerging technologies, like Netscope, for example. Together with my colleague here today, Cedric, our pre-sales for Netscope, we're going to talk about Netscope and more specifically DLP. So Netscope, well, we know them as an SSE vendor, but they actually provide full-blown SaaS also. So today our focus is more DLP and SSE, but know that Netscope also provides both as one. So really full-blown SaaS and fast, reliable, complete for your hybrid workforce. You can enforce zero trust, build in. We have a lot of technologies to support that, like our next-gen swag, GASB, cloud posture management, stuff like that. So why DLP? Well, the reason is quite easy. DLP is important. You have to know where your data is. So first of all, like everything in security, data is everywhere and visibility is key. You have to know where your data resides. It could be a SaaS application, like an ERP system like Salesforce or CRM, or Office 365, or communication tool like Slack or Teams or whatever. But anyway, those are the managed SaaS that we know about. There's a lot of SaaS we don't know about, but more of that later on. So a lot of places where your data can reside, a lot of data flows, you need visibility to first of all know where your data lives. And that data also includes sensitive data. And no matter where your data is, you need to be protected, right? It needs to be protected everywhere, not only on the endpoint, but also on the cloud and in motion. What also is very important, we want to avoid data breaches. Those are a lot of times unintentional. People that just use the wrong tools, but could also be a breach by an attacker who wants to do data exfil. So a lot of different ways you can lose data, but still the impact is the same. Your data is out there. It could be about personal information by your employees or customers, but also could be maybe very sensitive information for your organization. We want to do that not only by enforcing, but also by coaching. But Cedric is going to talk about it later on. And the last piece is compliance. Compliance is also very important. So we want to make sure that we are compliant. NIS 2 is coming up, so more about that later on. We said DLP can be easy. It wasn't a lure of our marketing easy way to lure people inside the session. We really believe DLP can be easy. In the past, I had some experience with Symantec, more the legacy DLP. That could be a real pain in the ass, especially data classification. But even then, the implementing the technology, it was static technology. And it was fingerprinting based on files alone. That's not what next-gen DLP should do. It's not what Netscope does. So Netscope will provide you actually full visibility in all the data flows. So that's the first thing you have to know. Okay, what tools are you using so you know which are they using it you don't manage. You want full visibility on everything that data is residing into. If people are using a lot of shadow IT, so tools you don't manage, you have to know why they're using it. Is there maybe not a good alternative? So that is something for you to learn about. Okay, we have to provide an alternative and you have to coach our people to use the right alternative. So that's first. Later on, the next step is actually, okay, we know where our data is now. How can we protect that? Well, we don't want to do it statically, we want to do it dynamically. And that's when Netscope provides real context. And Netscope is a secure service edge. It's not just DLP. DLP is just a part of it. So we're going to use more information like the user identity. Is that user the first time logs on from a certain device or from a specific location? Is it normal that the user uses those tools? Is it normal that he just downloads a lot of information about a customer? But also at the device, is it bring your own device? Is it managed device? And what application are they using? Netscope is born in the cloud. They have information of more than 40,000 SaaS applications. They know how trustworthy some applications actually are or not. And then the data itself is also important. The context of that data. What type of file is it? The size of the file. So there are a lot of points that Netscope can use to actually have a better idea or provide context. If we have that context, next step is zero trust. Very important to apply zero trust. You don't want it to be black or white. You want to have some context about that. Then you can say, okay, if that's the case, my policy can enforce that. And that needs to be a part of something bigger than just only one vendor. Okay, DLP is part of Secure Service Edge, but also part with integrations like identity and access. Right? If you want to enforce those policies, maybe together with Okta, if Netscope suspects some things because he has that context, he has user behavior, he has that CASB, all the information, and you want to access a certain SaaS application, maybe that is suspicious. And just to make sure, we're going to trigger an extra MFA through Okta. Or maybe you're going to use information about your EDR tool, because the EDR tool says something about that device. We don't trust that device because maybe they see malicious behavior on the device of process execution. Then that EDR tool can say to Netscope, maybe shouldn't be accessing that application. So integration is key here, and having context also. Compliance. Well, this looks very terrible to look at. I'm sorry for that, but to be fair, NIS2 is coming. All right, we have like 1.5 years to be compliant for a lot of organizations, and actually Belgium is doing very well because the CCB already gave you a whole list for critical and essential organizations that, okay, these are the controls we're going to look at. You need to be compliant with those controls. And this is just a subset that I took that really connects to Netscope and DLP more specific. So a lot of information here is about data. You where your data reside, that you know where your data is, that it's well documented, you know your data flows, you know who has access, how is that access given, remote access. We don't prefer VPN anymore, there's too much issues with VPN. So zero trust and the network private access, stuff like that is important. But also, okay, your data is at rest, is it protected, in transit, is that protected, are those buckets in the cloud encrypted, that kind of stuff. How you work with removable transfers like USB devices? Are you protecting the data leak? So that's real DLP. But also the baselining, so the user behavior of normal data flows. Because we can baseline on the traditional network with firewalls and NDRs, but our data is residing in the cloud, okay? Not a lot of data is still on-prem. Almost everyone in Belgium is now full-blown of 365, SharePoint Online. That's great. The data is residing in the cloud. That's why we also see that almost half of the data breaches out there are actually SaaS breaches. And this is mentioned in the IBM data breach reports. Almost half of all breaches are in SaaS. So it makes sense that we're gonna also protect that SaaS environment for our data. And now Cedric will talk about DLP, but also show you with some demos.
Yes, indeed. And in fact, before we actually start talking about how Netscope is providing DLP, let's kind of summarize what DLP is all about. So let's start with data. What is data? Well, I think we're all familiar with data. We use it every day. But in fact, data on its own is nothing. 64, what does that mean? You don't know. However, if you have enough data, multiple data sets, and you know how to understand that data, well, you have what we call information. And that's what we would like to protect in our organization, our business information, but also information regarding to our people. Think about it, our employees, our customers, our partners. Really key here to keep in mind is that data resides and can move between different phases. You can compare that with water. Water can be liquid, gas, solid. With data, it's the same. We have what we call data at rest, that is static somewhere on the device, in storage, in the cloud, but it's static, not being used. Then we have actually data being used by an application, by a user, by software. And then if we kind of transfer data over the network, we refer that as data in motion. And we will see later on that Netscope is able to address those different use cases and help you protect data at rest, in motion, and in use. How do you lose data? That's a key question, because most of the time you think as the hacker, a hacker that can get in, compromise the system, user account, and then start exfiltrating data. That's true. However, here you should focus in the first phase to actually block that hacker to get in, identify malicious, suspicious activities on endpoints to then block that user, that device, instead of using DLP to block actual data exfiltration. However, DLP is very useful for other use cases as well, as we will see with inside threats. When we think about an inside threat, we think about an unaware user or a compromised user. So imagine a user sitting at home, opening his personal laptop, going to Office 365, and massively starting downloading a lot of files. Maybe one of those files are sensitive. It maybe contain intellectual property regarding to our organization. So we want to make sure to see that and eventually block that. Another example of an unaware user would be he's trying to send a file to a customer, and that file is actually blocked by Office 365 of another tool. So the user starts looking at the internet to find other tools to share data. And the moment he actually upload a file to an sanctioned application or an unmanaged application, game over. Your data is now lost. And of course, we have the ability to exfiltrate data to other data storage, such as USB drive. So Netscope is able to protect data at these different use cases, but how do you do that? Well, it all starts with visibility. That's really key. No visibility, no control, you cannot react. Let's talk a bit more about how Netscope is providing DLP. That being said, it is important to point out that Netscope has once again named the leader by Gartner in the MQ quadrant for SSE. And we know that DLP is a key component of that SSE solution. So that way, Netscope is able to provide you the most comprehensive and most advanced cloud DLP solution to help you secure data across different environments, but more important, in use, at rest, or in motion. Let's take a look at that. So remember, we talked about visibility. Well, that's really key because Netscope is able to specify where your data is, who is accessing your data, why, at what moment, when, etc. But what's more important here is to be able to identify sensitive data, and that's called data classification. And Netscope is really good at that. We will see that in a minute. And then, of course, control capabilities. Netscope provides you granular control capabilities through policies. Here, once again, the goal is to easily help you create policies to control data at rest, in use, and in motion. Netscope provides a comprehensive solution. What do we mean by that? Well, first of all, it is delivered from the cloud. Netscope DLP is a cloud solution, so you have consistent security for every user across the entire world. In addition to that, it doesn't matter what use case you want to address. It is a SaaS application, IaaS, a private app, web application, or even on the endpoint itself. Netscope can address those different use cases. In addition to that, Netscope goes a step beyond traditional data protection solutions where they are pretty static. Netscope tries to be adaptive, and they refer that as zero trust data protection. As Stan mentioned, having a lot of information on what's going on, having enough context, and use that context for your DLP profiles, that's the key of Netscope. And that's the reason why Netscope can provide you best-in-class DLP. Let's take a look at that. Well, we can see that here, a traditional Swig solution at the bottom, and at the top we have the combination of what Netscope is using, Gatsby, Swig, plus on top of that DLP. So we now have user information, device information, application information, but we also know if that application should be trusted or not using the Cloud Confidence Index score. We also have something similar for the user called the User Confidence Index score, and that score will be changed or impacted based on user behavior analytics. And then on top of that, you will have your DLP profile. So hopefully this shows you how easy it is with Netscope to provide you DLP. In addition to that, keep in mind that we have contextual policy actions. So we can, for instance, specify the action to coach, to encrypt, to legal hold, quarantine, and much more, rather than just allowing or blocking traffic. How does Netscope identify sensitive data? Data classification is, of course, key. Well, Netscope has a broad set of detection technologies and advanced classification algorithms, leveraging AI and machine learning capabilities to help you identify sensitive data across your entire environment. The first technique here is called content matching, and it's really a kind of a static way of doing by using predefined data identifiers and personal identifiers. That way you can identify credit card, bank account numbers, financial, and whole kind of other private sensitive data. But it is really static. So how do you do that? Well, first of all, you go to the Netscope platform and you go to the policies. At the bottom, you have the DLP profile. So once again, it's integrated into the existing Netscope solution. No additional platform, no additional agent to be installed. What's the DLP profile? Well, DLP profile, in fact, consists of multiple DLP rules. Let's take a look at that. I'm now filtering down to only financial DLP profiles. We have a combination of predefined and custom DLP profiles. And here, an example of the GDPR predefined profile you can see that it contains multiple rules. And you can take a look at those rules. And if you think like, oh, this is a pretty nice rule, however, the severity is not adequate for my environment, well, you can modify that or create a custom DLP rule. Let's take a look at that. Well, when you create a custom DLP rule, you can use the predefined rules, such as here, an example for medical tests. And in addition to that, you will be able to add your custom identifiers, specify advanced configuration, and then of course modify the severity. And that's done here by changing the threshold for either low, medium, high, critical severity. Then you can also specify the action, what moment the policy should trigger. In our case here, when the severity is set low. Okay, another method to actually detect data is also a solution that exists for many years, is fingerprint. But you will see that Netscope is actually able to combine those different techniques to provide you once again best-in-class DLP. Let's take a look. Fingerprinting means that you will provide a file, and that file will be used as a baseline. So first step, we create a fingerprint object, and we upload a file. Then we create what's called a fingerprint rule. We will specify the file we just uploaded. In my case, it's called contracts. And then you will specify at how many percent you should have similarity with other files. So best practice is set to 70%. In my case, I put the threshold at 80%. So if a file, an image, whatever data that passed through Netscope and that looks the same as this fingerprint we created using our document, well, then Netscope will be able to detect that and flag it. We'll see that in the demo later on. Another really cool feature here is the fact that Netscope can once again use AI and machine learning capabilities to analyze what's going on an image or on a document. If you take a look at a document, for instance, usually you need to open that document to be able to read that text. You have screenshots inside the document, you need to be able to detect them as well. So here we can see a combination of image classification and document classification. Pretty new and awesome here is that Netscope can also identify source code, a lot of different programming language are supported. And I talked about it previously, rather than just allowing or blocking traffic, we can also coach the user. We can say, hey, look, what you are doing here is not good, it is considered sensitive, non-compliant, please stop. Or we can give the user also the ability to actually bypass that notification and proceed with this action. So pretty nice. So to resume, first of all, Netscope has a broad set of technologies. We can identify over 1,600 different file types. We use AI and machine learning. That's also really key. We can integrate with third-party data classification technologies and other tools as well, such as EIM, EDR solutions. Okay, let's try to summarize what we have seen so far. We will create a new DLP profile. And the first option that we have when we create a DLP profile is to add some file characteristics. So here, to keep it simple, I specify that all PDF files that are larger than 5 or 10 megabytes in this demo should be blocked. Blocked is in fact the action, and we will configure that later on. The next step that we can do here is specify what we call classification rule. Here we are able to actually use DLP rules, classifiers, and fingerprints. The DLP rules, remember, we have the predefined and custom ones. So here, in this demo, I show you how to use the driver license predefined rule and the identity predefined rule to identify driver license and identities. You can also use the classifier, and that's the way how we use AI and machine learning capabilities. So here we are able to detect something that looks like a consulting agreement or a loan agreement or a general payment information. That being said, let's kind of recap what we have seen so far and dive into the demo. First of all, Netscope is able to protect data at rest, data in use, and data in motion. Let's start with data in motion where Netscope is inline. As mentioned, Netscope is inline. What does that mean? You have an endpoint. That endpoint is running the Netscope agent, so that all traffic is now steered to Netscope cloud. We're able to provide threat prevention, but also DLP capabilities to protect either web, SaaS, ERs, private app, and email services. Let's take a look at an example. First one is Google Drive. It is an unsanctioned application. And the other example is Yahoo Email, which I have categorized as a sanctioned application. And the reason for that is because it has a really low cloud confidence index. You can see for both applications different activities, different things that a user can perform. And our goal here now is to provide a real-time protection DLP rule for Google Cloud. How do we do it? Well, first we go to the real-time protection policy. We specify what application should be used, what application is the destination, so here Google Drive. We specify the activities we want to block. But here, instead of blocking the activities, we just want to enable a DLP profile to make sure that when we download, when we post, when we send file, that data is not containing sensitive data. So the next step is to actually provide a DLP profile. So here I will use my custom profile I showed you on the previous slide. And then of course the action. And we have a whole kind of alerts, actions. We can select alert, allow, block, but we can also integrate with EIM solutions, such as Okta, for instance, to provide multi-factor authentication. Here we can take a look at the result of that policy. If I now try to upload a file to Google Drive, you can see it is blocked. The reason for that, why it is blocked here, it is in fact a JPEG file. That JPEG file is in fact a screenshot of an entire Teams conversation, and one of those bullets is actually containing a screenshot of that same document. And Netscope is able to identify that, and you can see that the text of that screenshot is in fact even not readable. So just to show you the combination of fingerprinting, DLP rules, and classifiers where you have your AI machine learning capability. Another example where you would, for instance, block Yahoo Mail because it has a real low CCI, looks like this. So here we are blocking download, send, and upload activities for Yahoo Mail. But instead of just blocking it, you would be once again able to add a DLP profile to have some more granular control. Okay, so let's take a look at the result of that. I'm now on Yahoo Mail, so I'm able to access the application. I'm able to read my mails. However, at the moment I try to upload a file, or at the moment I try to send a file, I'm blocked. You can see the nice pop-up from Netscope saying, hey, the action you are performing is not compliant. Okay, great. Let's move on with the second example here and protect data at rest. So instead of having Netscope inline, Netscope can also kind of operate outline using Gatsby and Swig functionalities to integrate over API with your SaaS, IaaS, and even your email services. Let's take a look at that. So here I will not create a real-time protection rule, but I will create an API detection protection policy. This time you need to specify your SaaS or IaaS application. In my case, I specify here 2 blocks. You specify what user should be triggered. So here, you either say all users. You specify the actions regarding to the content. Should that content be triggered on all files or only files that are publicly shared or internally shared? Then specify the activity. What should be allowed? Creating, downloading, uploading, etc. Then, of course, specify your DLP profile. And that's the way you make sure that no sensitive data is being lost or being sent to that application. And then, of course, the action, we can see once again a whole bunch of different actions. We can even set the action to encrypt. We can even unshare a file afterwards through API connection. And here, for the purpose of this demo, I will have set the action to delete, just to show you that's also possible that if, for instance, a user is uploading one of his personal files to a corporate instance, that you are able to delete that file today. And that's also pretty nice. At the end, you have the option to notify a user, the owner of the document, the user that's actually performing the action, or the administrator. Okay, of course, the prerequisite here to actually integrate with IaaS and SaaS is to have proper API connection, as you can see on this slide. Let's go to the last example here, how to protect data in use. So here, and that's really key, we are able to use the Netscope agent that's used to actually steer traffic to the Netscope cloud. But this time we are able to use those capabilities to protect our endpoint. And the goal here is to be able to check or control what USB devices are plugged into our corporate laptops, for instance. So the first step is here, of course, to enable Endpoint DLP on the same agent, so no additional software required. And then we will specify what we call an endpoint protection policy. And we have 2 types: the device policies and content. The device policy shows you or gives you the ability to control what devices are allowed, which we call about USB devices, of course, what USB devices are allowed to plug into a laptop, or what device should be blocked. And here, to give you a simple example, I basically block all devices. to show you the result of that. So we can see here on my Windows client, I received an update from Netscope because I actually will enable Netscope DLP. You'll see that on the right side here. The endpoint DLP is still disabled, but at the moment it will be enabled, Netscope will detect that USB drive on my laptop and will definitely drop that connection. The second option, as I mentioned, is not only to restrict what device should be allowed on my computer, but also to specify what data you can pass to that device. And that will be done through content files. So here we can once again see that nice code. Another thing that I want to point out is the fact that Netscope provides you monitoring capabilities as well. So everything what happens, Netscope will log that and show you that through the scope IT attack. So here, if I go to the endpoint events, we can see the installation and the removal of that device. And if we take a look at the right-hand side here, we have some additional details regarding to the USB device being used. So based on that information, I'm now able to kind of modify the policy that was kind of blocking all devices to now create a policy to allow only board-rate devices. And therefore, as you can see, I will specify some criteria that can be used for Netscope to allow specific devices, such as the manufacturer, the device ID, the model, or even the serial number of that USB stick. And then, of course, as I mentioned, we have the content policies where we are able to control what data is moved, copied, what actions are done on that USB stick. Here we can see a pretty nice example because I'm able to say, hey, look, all files that are greater than 5 megabytes, that are PDF files that contain presentation of text information should be blocked. But the condition here, in addition, is that that file should be originating from Google Drive. So once again, that way we're able to control data in your entire environment, even if it's at rest, in use, or in motion. And as I mentioned, every action made by Netscope is logged. So we can see here that if I try to upload a larger file than 5 megabytes coming from Google Drive, it is of course now logged. Okay, so we talked a lot about Netscope DLP. Just want to give you a kind of quick review here. Netscope provides best-in-class DLP solution. And in addition to that, as we saw, we can address different use cases from SaaS, web, email, and endpoint to protect data in use, data at rest, and data in motion. And we talked about Netscope DLP. Please keep in mind that Netscope has not only kind of a static way of doing with data identifiers, but also a combination with AI and machine learning capabilities, the exact match feature, fingerprinting, that can all be combined to provide you best-in-class security. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and otherwise I will be right back to Stan.
All right, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Hopefully you had a better idea and understanding how Netscope actually does DLP, because DLP scares a lot of people, but it will be necessary for your data to protect your data and for the CISOs to sleep at night. So thanks again. If you have any questions, please contact us and see you until the next episode. Then we can talk about integrations with IAM. So stay tuned and thank you very much and have a nice day and enjoy your weekend.